Landscape, Lora Stimson. Audio Descriptive Guide, July 2026. Lora Stimson was born in Essex and studied at Norwich School of Art and Design, now NUA. She lives on the Norfolk-Suffolk border. Her work expresses the horizons and hedgerows of East Anglia. Using bold colour, texture and abstraction, her pieces reflect the rural, agricultural and wild spaces of her childhood and now of her own children's. Lora primarily works in acrylics, typically building the landscape in layers, often scratching and scraping into the surface. The Old Shop Creative Space, Hingham. Landscape, the horizons and hedgerows of East Anglia by Lora Stimson. Saturday the 11th and Sunday the 12th of July 2026. Welcome to the Old Shop pop-up gallery. Shelfie 2. This composition splits into two dominant zones, an upper sky of deep teal and cobalt blue, streaked with violet flecks that suggest atmospheric turbulence. It feels as if a storm gathers on the horizon. Below, a field dissolves into a dense textured tangle of yellow, green and rust colours. Vertical strokes suggest grasses or corn. The paint handling is loose and gestural, creating a scrumbled surface. The piece is moody but vibrant. Shelfie 3. Another small work in the same series. Again we see a piece divided into two distinct areas. A sky depicted in slate and lavender, and a softly textured field of green and yellow below. This piece is particularly striking for its texture, as the paint in some places appear veined with a fine network of cracks, like that of a dry riverbed. Shelfie 1. A third variation from the same series of sky and field motif. This one is shot through with warmer, more sun-kissed tones. The upper register glows, smoky red flecked with coral. It feels as if the sun is ready to break through. A thin coral line threads along the horizon, punctuated by small, dark, round trees. Below, the field is dense and moody in olive and mauve. Faint diagonal scratches rake across the surface like wind-blown grass. Weather. A strong atmospheric vista, which is more representational than abstract, though the artist employs her distinct gestural brushwork. In the foreground we see a rich, verdant path, an artistic tool to lead the viewer into the image. The path, outlined by blue fence posts, cuts the scene diagonally and draws us through to the lush fields that lay ahead. In the distance, a blue and black tree line denotes the horizon. The main attraction, however, is the sky, as bruised violet clouds gather and dissolve into streaks of pale gold, while shafts of light pierce the sky with their luminosity. While dramatic and demonstrative of nature's ability to amaze, the moment is also indicative of its fleeting beauty. Fenland. Here we see the artist exploring the landscape using a broad palette of blue tones. A heath rolls out before the viewer into the distance. The thicket is dense in the foreground and depicted by loaded, layered daubs of light and dark blues. The brushstrokes are thick and hatched, and seemingly impenetrable. In the midground the terrain is open and sun-kissed, with swathes of light blue and green hues speckled with lemon yellow. The brushstrokes become lighter here, and the space looks inviting, though we do not see people. The heath is calm and quiet. In the background we can see dark hills on the horizon, creating atmospheric tension. The sun appears to be warmly rising behind them, adding to the sense of early morning tranquility. Hithe. This highly textured and somewhat abstract work is almost sculptural. Layers of paint have been built up and in some areas then removed in a sgraffito style to create rich depth or to reveal layered colours beneath. The artist presents us with distinct chromatic zones. A blush and sage-tinted sky dissolves into a mid-ground of bold blue and white patches of deep colour. It appears the artist has used a palette knife to load colour onto the canvas, to then drag it into blocks representing perhaps buildings or trees. More expressive mark making can be seen in the earthy foreground of salmon pinks and greens. Dark lines create the suggestion of the outline of a boat resting in water, and we see the viewer enjoys the view from the lush bank. The pink, painted in the artist's typical gestural and textural brushstrokes. Here we see a chalky pink path that cuts diagonally through the composition into the distance. The path leads the viewer's eye from the foreground towards a striking blue and pink horizon that further gives a sense of depth to the work. The path is flanked by heavily daubed blue and coral grasses, or perhaps fence posts. Beyond those boundaries, acid yellow and green fields spill outwards. Energetic downward brushstrokes represent crops of plants growing. The fields vibrate with life. Map. This abstract expressionist painting presents us with colour fields both in style and representation. Though not a map in the traditional sense, we are still invited to navigate the readable terrain and observe the transitions from one distinct space to the next. Due to the abstract nature of the work, the blocked demarcations of dark and light greens and reds and blues could represent fields, heaths, scrubland, farmland, or even open water. It is the viewer's privilege to decide. Though the landscape is not fully determined, the sky, however, is a definite. Thick, scratched and layered paint in soft, sun-soaked peach and pink gives a sense of a hazy dawn sunrise and pleasantly warms the canvas. Splash. Here we have one of the boldest works in the show. This highly atmospheric piece is more about mood and light than direct representation, though the title gives us something to work with. In the foreground of Splash, the artist delivers the focal point of the work. Huge diagonal paint-laden brushstrokes dart and jostle. The paint is thick with sudden movement, a jarring comparison to the otherwise serene background. Paintings in this show are void of people. We do, however, feel their presence, this giant splash of water being a key moment. Beyond the dynamic movement, the scene is awash with tranquil lime green and blue tones. The rest of the water is undisturbed. On the bank in the distance, we get a sense of buildings and trees against a warm rose-pink summer evening sky. The scene is inviting and full of summer fun. Norfolk Neons. Here we have a collection of 6 small abstract landscape paintings, all working with the same vocabulary of bold saturated colour and loose gestural brushwork, standing in for hills, fields and skies. The artist employs her signature style of drawing the viewer in through the use of an electric palette of blues, greens and corals. This time, however, the image leaps out more due to the neon highlights. These expressionist works exist happily as a collective, but each piece is striking and more than capable of holding its own space. Petrichor. This loosely painted dreamlike landscape layers translucent washes of colour, rose pink, sage, green and steel blue, that bleed into one another rather than holding hard edges, giving the piece a hazy atmospheric quality, almost like a memory half recalled. Though highly abstract, this work appears to be that of a coral sun breaking through the clouds after rainfall, also as suggested by the earthy title. Below, dark navy and forest greens read like silhouetted structures, trees or hillsides. Tans. Here we see a classic motif from Lora, that of a path cutting through fields and leading the viewer into the distance. This version, however, is pushed to its most acidic and luminous extreme. The sky warms the image with coral tones and a cool cobalt blue tree line. The fields, however, explode into an almost electric sun-bleached psychedelic green. Blue outlines the fields and anchors the vivid spring colours, keeping them grounded. The path dissolves into something more atmospheric and looser as dusky pinks soften the image and counterbalance the vibrancy of the fields. Quartet. A classic beloved motif of Lora's, we see another lilac-coloured path leading away from the viewer, cutting through fields and disappearing into a tree-lined horizon. The fields are a little more abstracted in this work and are created using broad angular brushstrokes that dart freely. The trees in the background stand like rigid sentinels on the horizon and appear striking in their silhouette form against the impasto lilac sky. Dawn. This fully realised painterly landscape has a clear sense of place and light. We see a dirt path receding in the strong one-point perspective, splitting a lush field down the centre, pulling the eye towards the dense blue tree-lined horizon in the distance. The vegetation of the fields is saturated in cool emerald green hues and peppered with teal. The upward brushstrokes denote erupting life. The upper half of the image is a smouldering burnt orange sunrise sky that appears to be painted with laden brushstrokes or even a palette knife. Overall, the image is highly inviting and evokes a sense of nostalgia. Dusk. This work vibrates with colour. Salmon pink and coral intertwined with chartreuse and emerald green brushstrokes fill fields lining a coral-coloured path that cuts centrally through the image and leads into the distance. Trees line the horizon in the background, and the sky is warm. Every facet of the work feels sun-kissed, and the piece pulses with life, a moment of divine magic before nightfall. Slip. This composition reads like a wild, sun-bleached landscape. A soft blush pink sky band sits along the very top, meeting a horizon line of turquoise and teal. Below this, the painting erupts into loose, slashed diagonal strokes of black, teal and dusty pink, suggesting reeds or grasses blowing in the wind. Finally, at the far bottom of the painting, dense, vivid green marks like foliage, caught mid-sway, anchor the image. The title Slip is as abstract as the work itself, though could be in reference to the way the paint appears to slip down the canvas, achieving a sense of movement within the piece. Art by Lora Stimson. Audio descriptive text by Lorraine Pajak. Film created and narrated by Sue Moore. Photo of the Old Shop by Photojam. The Old Shop Creative Space, 3A Church Street, Hingham, Norfolk NR9 4HL. www.oldshophingham.co.uk